The Inca Empire by Chloe Lind and Mattie Odell.
The Inca Empire was located on the Pacific coast of South America. It existed from 1463 to 1532.
Here is a basic timeline of major events in South America during the Incas' time.
Here are two of the most important rulers of the Incas' time. Huascar ruled during the peak of the Inca Civilization, helping them become more successful than ever before. Pachacuti helped the Incas build a larger empire that extended throughout South America.
The Incas were extremely strict with laws and punishments. They had no group of set laws, but had certain appointed people to punish citizens when they saw fit.
The Incas believed in reincarnation. They imagined a heavenly afterworld that could only be reached by obeying moral code throughout their lives. Incas would shape the skulls of babies by wrapping them tightly in cloth to distinguish the classes. Higher classes had pointier heads.
Their beliefs were centered around many different gods. Many of the gods were based on earthly elements such as rain, lightning, and life. The most important god was Inti, the sun god. Some gods were worshipped more than others. Some included Viracocha, Ilapa, Pamakacha, Mamakucha, and Mamakila. It was believed that the gods had ultimate control over their lives and afterlife.
The Incas participated in many different religious rituals. Popular rituals included cannibalism, Capac Rami/Initi Rami, and Capacocha. Cannibalism was a type of sacrifice used frequently in the Inca Empire. The Inca believed that by consuming a person you inherit their power, accomplishments, and skills. The Capac Rami/Initi Rami was and still is a very important festival because it is honoring the sun god as well as being an initiation for young boys who may be about to gain some sort of power.
The Incas were separated into four main social groups. At the top of the pyramid was the Sapa Inca, who had absolute control over the civilization. Next was the royalty, who were the close family of the Sapa Inca. Down from this, there was the nobility, and there were two groups: the nobility of blood, these were royal relatives, and the nobility of privilege, those who were educated. Lastly, there was the Ayu, who were general people such as farmers and craftsmen.
The Sapa Inca was worshipped almost as highly as the gods were. In fact, they were considered descendants of the sun. The position of being the Sapa Inca was only hereditary, and he was allowed to marry his sister to maintain the royal blood, while commoners were not. Before death, the Sapa Inca would choose his next son to rule, and it was not always the oldest one, as he judged off of who was most ready for the responsibility.
Some of the natural resources that the Incas utilized included potatoes, corn, llamas, and alpacas. These crops were the most popular food resource in the empire. They were easy to grow, easily maintained, and needed little nutrients to survive. Because of the harsh climates that they lived in, the weather varied often, and these crops were some of the few that were able to survive the conditions. Llamas and alpacas helped the Incas transport the goods across the rocky terrain. The Incas were also very dependent on agriculture. The crops they grew themselves were their only source of food, but because of the harsh climate and rocky terrain, they had to invent unique ways of producing as much crop as possible. They soon created terrace farming, which allowed them to form numerous small and flat plateaus around the area. This boosted crop production and allowed them to live more plentiful lives. The trials they faced also forced them to invent new ways of living. They invented the quepos, which were knotted strings used for recording and conveying meaning, paved roads, which helped to transport goods along the empire, and terrace farming allowed them to farm on all of the rocky and uneven terrain that they faced. They also invented perfectly cut stone buildings, which used fillers inside of the stacked stones so that they would go evenly on top of each other and create an end result that was perfectly cut. They also invented hanging bridges, which made it easy to walk from one place to another around the empire without having to climb over mountains.
Rather than trading with other empires for resources in times of famine, the Incas believed in being independent civilization. They used a system called meta labor that directed the peasants of the society towards irrigation and crop projects. Once their work was completed, they would store the crops they had grown to save for future times of famine or immediate use. Then the peasants were released to pursue activities in the arts.
The Incas mainly utilized a form of communication that wasn't written. They invented their own form of communication which they called quepos. Quepos is essentially ropes tied together to convey a certain meaning. The length of the rope, the amount of knots, and the placement of the knots all contributed to one cohesive meaning. They also sent people, chasqui messengers, to send these messages throughout their empire. Some common examples and styles of Inca art include metalworks, textiles, and ceramics. Some lasting pieces of art that you can find in museums today include the Inca Chronicle, miniature gold llamas, and double bowls. Monumental architecture that was created by the Incas includes Machu Picchu. This is believed to have been a royal estate or sacred religious site for Inca leaders. Machu Picchu is made up of more than 150 buildings ranging from baths and houses to temples and sanctuaries. The Incas faced harsh and cold climates. This made farming and everything they did much harder, but they invented new ways to rise above. Here is a map of where the Inca Empire was located. The Incas' major source of water was directed straight into the empire through a series of aqueducts. These aqueducts increased arable land and provided more drinkable water for the civilization. The Amazon River most likely channeled into the system of aqueducts, although we are not certain.
The Inca ceremonies were centered around pleasing the gods. They did this by sacrificing resources such as crops, animals, and sometimes even people. The celebrations and ceremonies were occasionally very large and visited by thousands of people.
Positives of Inca life included fun festivities to attend, taxes, which helped keep the government running. They generally ate well and they were taken care of by their government. Negatives included long and hard work, taxes that they had to pay, and they were not allowed to travel.
Overall, the Incas helped humans advance in many small ways, but the main things they did to further our species' success were advancement in medicine and surgery and the influential art that they created. Their progress in medicine increased human survival rate by 85 to 90%, and the artwork that the Incas created still inspires artists today.
And that's the Inca Civilization. Thank